Hey guys, tonight we venture into blistering sunscapes where grains of burning sand whip across your cheeks, where your tongue feels like brittle parchment, and where hope dries out faster than sweat under the midday sky. You're on a royal expedition, riding at the rear of a grand caravan led by none other than Caliph Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, the Umayyad ruler who wakes up each morning wondering which lost magical city he might conquer next. Your camel lumbers with a sigh that sounds suspiciously like your own, as if both of you are questioning life choices. The dunes rise and fall around you like molten gold waves, hiding secrets of vanished civilizations with every gust. The wind smells of salt and heat, almost metallic, and you taste it on your cracked lips. Overhead, vultures circle, waiting for you to drop. And let's be real, you probably won't survive this journey if the desert has its way. The caliph's viziers told you of the city of brass, a lost city forged by jinn and sealed in time, filled with unclaimed treasures beyond your imagination. The promise of brass towers piercing the sky, inscriptions holding cosmic truths, and relics that could make even the wealth of Byzantium look like pocket change was simply too tempting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your location and local time down below. I love seeing how far our sleepy travels reach. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The camels grunt as dusk falls. Lanterns glow along the caravan, flickering pools of golden light that dance across sweating soldiers' faces. You sip tepid water from a goatskin flask, eyeing the horizon for any sign of shifting dunes or shadows moving against the sunset. Someone ahead shouts, a scout, pointing to faint stone markers half swallowed by sand. You nudge your camel forward, feeling bones ache from hours of riding. Historians still argue whether this particular expedition actually happened under Caliph Abd al-Malik, or if storytellers merged multiple rulers into one legendary quest. But here, under the indigo twilight, fiction feels just as heavy and real as your saddle sores. Your caravan halts near a grove of low, thorny trees, acacias that scratch the sky with skeletal branches. A small oasis lies beyond, the water reflecting the first evening star like a shard of mirror glass. You dismount, knees creaking, and nearly fall over when your foot catches a half-buried object. Digging it out, you find a melted glass amulet the size of a thumbnail, still shimmering with iridescent green and purple like beetle wings. One of the viziers snatches it from your hand, babbling about jinn tokens that keep sand demons at bay. Quirky tidbit for tonight. Medieval desert travelers often carried lumps of resin or shiny beads to distract malicious spirits, just in case one was tailing them. Campfires flicker alive. The cooks prepare barley gruel with a thin broth of dried lamb and cumin. While you unroll your thin mattress on packed sand, your mind buzzes with images of brass towers taller than Babylon's ziggurats, sealed palaces where queens still sleep in golden masks. The viziers sit cross-legged, reading from a papyrus scroll, murmuring about the journey's risks. One phrase catches your attention. The bronze rider points the way. Their eyes dart toward the western horizon, where dunes ripple under moonlight like the hides of sleeping monsters. You try to sleep. You really do. But the wind carries strange murmurs through camp, a hush like whispers just beyond comprehension. Maybe it's the jinn. Maybe it's your own fear muttering back at you. Or maybe it's the desert itself, telling you that human ambition is a mirage, just like water that vanishes as you approach. As the night deepens, you roll onto your back and stare at a sky overflowing with diamond pin pricks. You wonder how many have ridden before you into the dunes, never to return, their bleached bones joining the endless pale sands. The wind lulls you, though your stomach clenches with dread, because tomorrow, at dawn, you will follow the bronze rider, the statue that points to the city of brass. And there's no turning back once that metal finger aims your fate toward ruins no living traveler has ever left unscathed. Dawn breaks as a silent explosion of rose gold light spreading across the dunes. You sit hunched on your camel's back, eyelids gritty with fatigue, as the caravan lurches westward ahead, shimmering under the rising sun like a mirage solidifying into form. Stands the bronze rider. At first, it looks like a slender pillar half buried in sand, but as you approach, details sharpen. A mounted statue of a warrior cast entirely from darkened bronze. Shoulders squared beneath layered armor, helmet visor frozen mid-snarl. His horse's hooves are planted firmly atop a stone plinth carved with looping Kufic inscriptions, the letters half eroded by centuries of sandstorms. Both rider and horse face unwaveringly west, the rider's outstretched arm and pointing finger guiding all who dare to follow. The viziers dismount reverently, whispering prayers against desert curses. You slip from your camel, legs trembling, and crane your neck to take in the statue's height, easily twice a man's. Bronze plates ripple across the horse's flanks, and the rider's spear arm once held a metal staff, now snapped off at the wrist. Historians still argue whether this was a genuine marker from the Abbasid era or an older relic co-opted into legend by desert traders weaving their tales to attract caravans. You peer closer at the inscriptions wrapping the plinth. Some glyphs remain legible. Turn back, O seeker, lest brass become your tomb. You almost chuckle at the melodramatic threat until a gust of wind sends sand scraping against your exposed skin like tiny razors, reminding you the desert never jokes without consequences. A guard beside you, teeth chattering despite the heat, mutters that the bronze rider is cursed. Supposedly, if you stare into its hollow eyes too long, you see the hour of your death reflected back. Naturally, you lean forward to peek into those shadowed sockets, only to find nothing but dark pits filled with swirling sand and small bones of desert mice nesting there. One skitters out onto the plinth edge, squeaking indignantly before vanishing under the rider's bronze greaves. You smile despite yourself. Even mythical statues become rodent real estate if left alone long enough. The caliph's voice booms out across the gathering. This is the guide of legends. Beyond lies the path to the city of brass. Prepare yourselves, for we depart at midday. His words rippled down the caravan ranks, triggering an industrious scuttle of activity. Tents collapsing, camels grumbling under redistributed loads, leather waterskins topped off at the dwindling oasis. You wander around the plinth's circumference, fingertips brushing centuries-old script as if reading Braille. Every groove feels hot under your touch, like the metal absorbed the desert sun until it glows from within. A fringe scholar traveling with the caravan tells you a tidbit as he scribbles notes furiously. The writer's alloy might contain traces of meteoric iron, lending it a near-sacred status among early Islamic metallurgists obsessed with fallen star metal. Nearby, a group of guards attempt to wedge a crowbar under a protruding bronze hoof, hoping to pry free the entire statue. The viziers intervened swiftly, threatening severe punishment for desecrating the guidepost. You back away, amused at the caliph's men imagining they could drag a multi-ton monument across shifting sands without it sinking like a rock in water. It's almost endearing, like watching beetles attempt to roll a boulder. Lunch is sparse, a handful of salted dates, coarse bread that flakes to dust between your teeth, and tepid camel milk. The heat slams down from above like a smith's hammer. Even breathing feels like inhaling from an open oven. You tie a damp cloth over your nose and mouth, hoping to filter the swirling grit, but it quickly dries to a crusted rag. Mid-afternoon shadows creep long across the dunes. When the caliph gives the order to move, you cast one last look at the bronze rider. Its metal silhouette remains frozen in stoic vigilance, pointing forever westward, unmoved by your fear or curiosity. Part of you wonders how many thousands of souls it has sent to their doom, how many prayers it has heard drift away on wind that never carries words home. Your camel trudges forward, each step sinking ankle deep into loose sand. The sun sinks toward late afternoon, an orange disk wobbling behind heat-shimmer haze. You clutch the saddle horn as your mount heaves up a steep slope, hooves slipping and sending streams of golden sand cascading down behind you. For a moment, as you reach the crest, you see nothing but a vast undulating desert stretching infinitely to the horizon, and ahead, a faint glint of something reflecting the dying light, something metallic and immense. Your heart thuds with a mix of wonder and dread, because whether the city of brass is real or a mirage waiting to vanish at dusk, you are committed now. The bronze rider has aimed you like an arrow into the endless sands, and it does not care where you land. The caravan presses onward under a sky melting into violet dusk, until the caliph calls a halt near a cluster of jagged rocks protruding like broken teeth from the sands. You dismount with stiff legs, inhaling the cooling air that carries a faint sweetness, a promise of water nearby. Viziers and scouts spread out with lanterns bobbing like captive fireflies in the deepening dark. Soon, shouts echo back, a well, my lord." Relief flows through the ranks. Camels grunt eagerly, sensing moisture. You follow the group towards a sunken stone circle half filled with drifting sand. Its rim is carved with delicate geometric motifs now weathered to shallow scars. A rope lies coiled beside it, attached to a battered bronze bucket. The caliph himself stands at its edge, flanked by guards holding up lanterns that spill wavering gold down the well shaft. One brave soldier lowers the bucket, hears it splash, and begins hauling it back. As the bucket crests the rim, everyone leans in hungrily until the reek hits you, a stinging, metallic odor mixed with rot. The water inside gleams an unnatural shade of green under lamplight, almost phosphorescent. You recoil instinctively, stomach twisting. Historians still argue whether medieval travelers encountered true arsenic-laced wells in the Syrian desert, or if such tales were cautionary metaphors woven into caravan folklore to explain mass poisonings from stagnant sources. But here and now, that toxic sheen is no metaphor. It's the difference between life and a lingering, cramping death. The viziers whisper among themselves. One flicks a pinch of white powder into the bucket, watching for reaction. A hiss rises as bubbles form along the surface, and he nods grimly. Copper salts and verdigris, this well is death. A trembling camel driver asks if the poisonous water could be filtered with cloth and prayer. The vizier's eyes soften in pity as he shakes his head. Unless you seek to meet your ancestors tonight, leave it untouched. Nearby, you notice an inscription chiseled into a slab half buried at the well's edge. You kneel, brushing away sand to reveal lines of angular script. Your lamp flickers across the words, "Drink not of this spring, for the serpent has kissed it." A shiver ripples through you at the phrase. The poetic imagery feels ominously literal in this place, as if somewhere below, a coiled snake drips venom into the hidden reservoir. A quirky tidbit learned from one of the fringe scholars. Medieval Arab geographers often recorded serpent wells, or dragon wells, sites that killed livestock with toxic minerals. Later, mythologized as lairs of underground monsters whose breath tainted the earth. In your sleepy haze, it almost seems reasonable that a basilisk might be curled under the sands, exhaling its slow, silent doom. The caliph orders the well sealed with stones to prevent desperate men from drinking in secret. Guards roll boulders over the opening, their grunts echoing into the silent desert night. For dinner, you chew dried figs and a thin strip of camel jerky, washing it down with warm water rationed from the caravan's clay jars. Every sip feels more precious now, with the knowledge that the land itself poisons intruders. You spread your bedding on packed sand under the looming teeth of black rock. Stars crowd overhead, fierce and unblinking, as if watching your trespass with quiet judgment. Someone strums an oud softly near the center of camp, the notes lilting with melancholy. Another traveler tells a weary joke about how, if they die here, at least the vultures will get a varied menu. Your own mind drifts to thoughts of water. Cool, clear water that doesn't shimmer green like an alchemist's failed potion. The thirst in your throat feels sharper now, knowing relief lay so close yet forever untouchable. Before you sleep, you stand alone at the sealed well, palm pressed against the rough stone. You imagine the city's people who built it, filling urns at dawn centuries ago before its curse settled in. You wonder if their bones still lie nearby, lips stained green with that final drink. You whisper a prayer, half for them, half for yourself. Then turn back to your thin blankets as the desert night wind sighs past like a dying breath. And as your eyes close, lulled by oud notes drifting on the breeze, you dream of bronze towers reflecting moonlight into eternity, and of wells that hold only secrets and death at their bottom. Sleep is a fragile thing in the desert. The sand beneath you cools into hard-packed stone by midnight, and you wake shivering despite the lingering warmth of the day burned into your bones. When dawn finally cracks open the eastern sky in streaks of peach and bruised purple, you sit up with grit in your hair, your mouth tasting of dust and stale camel milk. Around you, the caravan stirs in weary silence, everyone moving like automata, powered only by fear, duty, and the promise of riches. As the camels are loaded and the viziers mutter protective prayers, you glance westward. Today, the journey continues deeper into uncharted dunes where maps end and myth begins. The horizon swims under rippling heat, and part of you hopes to see the brass towers pierce the sky at last. Instead, all you find is emptiness until noon, when the wind begins to whisper. At first, it's just an errant breeze teasing your ears with fragmented vowels. But slowly, distinct syllables slither through the whistling gusts, words in no tongue you recognize. Your heart stutters. You look around, expecting to see a prankster grinning behind his keffiyeh, but everyone else rides with hunched shoulders and vacant eyes. No one seems to hear it. The voices intensify as the sun tilts westward. They come from nowhere and everywhere, soft, lilting, mournful, and angry all at once. You feel their presence prickling your neck. The scholarly scribe riding beside you grips his writing board so tightly his knuckles bleach white. When you whisper, do you hear it too? He flinches and nods rapidly, sweat coursing down his temples despite the cooling breeze. Historians still argue whether these desert jinn whispers were illusions born of heat exhaustion or if traveling tribes truly heard spirits wailing under the dunes. Some medieval chroniclers even wrote of entire caravans driven mad by unseen sirens, wandering into the sand until they vanished forever. You press a cloth tighter across your ears, but the voices curl into your skull like smoke, muttering of brass towers crowned with flaming orbs, gates that cannot close, queens whose hearts beat despite their blackened flesh. One of the camel drivers begins sobbing quietly. Another rider suddenly leaps from his saddle, bolting across the sands with a strangled scream. Guards chase after him, wrestling him down before he disappears behind a dune. When they drag him back, his eyes are glazed with terror, lips working soundlessly like a fish gulping air. That night, camp is silent, but for the restless sigh of wind. Fires burned low, their glow revealing gaunt faces and trembling hands clutching prayer beads. You lie under your thin blanket, heart thudding against the earth. Nearby, a wizened elder recounts a quirky tidbit to the caliph's vizier in hushed tones. Desert nomads sometimes leave offerings of butter and sugar on raised stone altars to placate the jinn, believing the sweetness will distract them from whispering into travelers' dreams. You almost wish for such an altar now. Anything to quiet the murmurs threading through the dark like spider silk. As your eyelids drift down, exhaustion finally conquering fear, the last thing you hear is a single clear phrase, feminine and gentle. Turn back, seeker, the brass towers are tombstones. Your breath catches, but sleep drags you under before you can process the warning. In your dreams, sand flows around you like water, and voices rise from its depths, an ocean of jinn lamentations echoing from a city no mortal should disturb. You wake before dawn to a sky so dark it seems endless, with only a faint silver glow at the horizon promising sunrise. The camp is already a hive of silent activity, shadows of men and camels moving through lantern light. The air feels heavy with something unspoken, as if everyone has heard the same voices whispering through the night. Today, the desert yields a different horror. By mid-morning, after hours of trudging over dunes the color of pale saffron, you spot it, a shape half buried in the sand, its silhouette jagged against the rising heat, shimmer. As you draw closer, details emerge. A throne carved from black basalt veined with copper, standing atop a low platform of crumbled stone. Perched upon it is what once was man. His body is shriveled, blackened as if burned, the skin clinging to bone in tight parchment folds. Empty eye sockets stare toward the horizon. His lips are pulled back in a silent snarl, teeth exposed to centuries of scouring winds. Fingers curl around a metal scroll case gripped so tightly his desiccated knuckles have fused to it. You shiver, despite the heat clawing at your back. Historians still argue whether petrified corpses like these were actual victims of desert exposure or dramatic installations by ancient rulers to warn trespassers. Some say poison was poured into the veins of condemned men, preserving them in horrific stillness to guard sacred roots. Others insist these stories arose from travelers finding mummified bodies at shrines and assuming punishment rather than burial. The viziers surround the throne, robes flapping in gusts of wind that smell faintly of iron and old decay. One leans close, reading the faint inscriptions chiseled along the basalt armrests. Here sits Al-Nadir, king of Ifrit and servant of Suleiman, he murmurs, voice quavering. May none disturb his rest. A quirky tidbit learned from a fringe manuscript. In medieval lore, Solomon, Suleiman, was believed to command armies of jinn bound to brass and iron seals. Rebels among them were cast into deserts or oceans, trapped until Judgment Day. Perhaps this petrified king once defied such power and paid with an eternal vigil here. Your curiosity flares against your fear. Carefully, you step closer, the sand sinking underfoot with soft sighs. The corpse's skull gleams under stray beams of sun, as if polished by centuries of storms. Flies drift lazily around its open mouth, seeking moisture that vanished long before you were born. The caliph signals, and two guards approach with chisels to prise the metal scroll from the dead man's grasp. Metal screeches against bone as the fingers crack open. The scroll case is long, capped at both ends with hammered brass, embossed in looping floral motifs. The vizier slides it open with reverent hands, unrolling a strip of thick blackened papyrus covered in angular calligraphy. He scans the lines, lips moving silently, before looking up with eyes wide. It is a warning, he whispers, a curse upon any who enter the city of brass without permission from its sovereign queen. It promises plague, blindness, and torment for their hubris. The guards exchange nervous glances. You swallow, tasting bile. The caliph frowns, but says nothing, his eyes locked on the horizon as if seeking the towers he refuses to abandon. That evening, camp is made near the throne. Fires glow under the watchful hollow gaze of the petrified king. No one speaks above a murmur. The camels shift restlessly, snorting and stamping their padded feet. You wrap yourself tightly in your blanket, eyes never leaving that skeletal figure propped against basalt power. In the flickering firelight, he almost seems to breathe, his chest rising in shallow rattles, his teeth chattering with words the desert stole long ago. You fall asleep to the whisper of sand grains skating across your blanket, your mind echoing the scroll's curse with every beat of your pulse. And just before dreams claim you, you think you see his blackened fingers twitch, gripping the armrest tighter, as if determined to hold his throne until the end of time. Dawn breaks pale and muted, as if the sun itself fears to shine upon what lies ahead. You rise with aching limbs, brush sand from your clothes, and gaze westward, eyes gritty from half-sleep and dreams of skeletal kings. The caravan packs quickly and silently, no one daring to speak of the corpse on its basalt throne. Instead, they follow the caliph's determined stare toward a hazy glimmer on the horizon, a faint glow that flickers gold even in morning's flat light. By midday, the dunes begin to flatten into a wide plain of hardened sand and pebbles. The camels move faster now, driven by their handlers' urgent chants. As heat rises in quivering sheets, your eyes strain to resolve shapes flickering within the mirage. First you see only wavering walls of molten bronze. Then, as the air clears for a precious moment, towers emerge. Impossibly tall spires topped with gleaming domes, their surfaces patterned with hammered reliefs that catch the sun and scatter its rays like shattered mirrors. The city of brass. You feel your pulse slam against your ribs in awe. Towers soar beyond anything in Baghdad or Damascus, each crowned with bulbous golden domes and spiked finials reaching skyward as if challenging the heavens themselves. Between them stretch wide ramparts of polished brass panels etched with dense scripts and geometric flourishes. The entire city seems to radiate its own pale coppery glow, flickering as if alive. Historians still argue whether this was a real fortified settlement lost to the desert, an allegory for the fleeting nature of human power, or an exaggerated retelling of caravan traders glimpsing distant settlements at dawn. Yet, as your camel clops forward, you see the towers solidify under the brutal sun, each window catching light like a blazing gemstone. Here and now, myth feels heavier than stone. You pass half-buried statues of jinn bound in contorted poses along the road, their mouths open in silent screams. A fringe scholar riding behind you mutters a tidbit about medieval beliefs. Brass was prized to imprison rebellious spirits, melted and recast into locks and seals to contain beings no prayer could pacify. The gates loom before you by late afternoon, rising 4 times the height of a man. They are wrought from massive sheets of darkened brass, studded with discs of hammered bronze and inset with panels depicting scenes of conquest and worship. Processions of crowned queens carried aloft on jeweled palanquins. Armies of spear-bearing men marching under flaring sunbursts. And robed figures bowing before swirling jinn forms, half human, half serpent. A hush falls over the caravan. Even the camels snort uneasily as their hooves clank against brass plates half buried in drifting sand near the gate's base. You dismount, legs trembling under the gate's sheer immensity. The caliph stands before it, face slack with wonder and fear. His viziers scurry forward, searching for an entrance mechanism among the etched panels, brushing away sand and dust to reveal concealed lines of script. The scholar beside you whispers, "It's like entering the mouth of a sleeping god, isn't it?" You nod, unable to reply, because that's exactly what it feels like, a god slumbering in brass and copper, each tower an upturned tooth, the domes twin glaring eyes. And these gates, its parted lips. One vizier locates a mechanism hidden behind an ornate lotus medallion. He presses it, and with a deep groaning rumble, the gates shift inward. A stale wind billows from within, carrying scents of dry rot, ancient incense, and something faintly metallic like blood upon bronze. You step forward into the threshold as the caravan bunches behind you, lanterns flickering to life against encroaching dusk. For a fleeting moment, your reflection shimmers across the brass panels in hundreds of distorted copies. A legion of you walking into the dead city in trembling unison. And though your heartbeat hammers with fear, wonder surges stronger, because whatever lies beyond these gates, horror, treasure, or curses no prayer can banish, you are among the few mortals to set eyes upon it. As you enter the city of brass, under the echo of groaning gates, the sun sinks behind jagged towers, casting your shadow long and thin across the silent streets ahead. The brass gates grind closed behind you with a final, echoing boom that reverberates through the silent city like a war drum. Darkness settles almost instantly, lit only by wavering lanterns held aloft by trembling hands. The caravan gathers into a tight knot as you stand at the threshold of wide streets paved in mosaic patterns of copper and bronze, tarnished by time into hues of green and black. The air feels thick and stale, carrying a faint scent of old oil and dry decay. You step forward, your boots ringing dully on metal tiles. The silence is absolute. No wind stirs the dust that curls in small drifts along the avenue edges. No bird cries overhead. The only sounds are your breaths, quick and shallow, and the occasional scrape of sandal on metal as your companions shuffle forward in wonder and dread. Tall buildings rise on either side, their facades clad in ornately stamped brass panels depicting endless scenes of conquest, worship, and opulence. Queens pouring libations for crowned kings, robed scholars inscribing vast scrolls, chained jinn bending under golden yokes. Some panels are corroded to near oblivion, the figures melted into abstract swirls by centuries of drifting sand. Others gleam almost untouched, as if waiting for your eyes alone to read their story. Historians still argue whether this city was truly built by jinn under the command of Suleiman, or whether it was an early metallurgical marvel lost to shifting dunes and remembered only in story. But tonight, the silence feels too heavy for mortal origins. You pass under archways engraved with dense Kufic script, each curve and loop picked out in hammered silver. Lantern light catches in the inlays, throwing fractured reflections across your companions' anxious faces. The scholarly scribe reads a phrase aloud. All who enter without her blessing shall drink dust and sleep unwept beneath these towers. His voice trembles as he replaces his scroll and avoids your gaze. A quirky tidbit from his muttered notes drifts to your ears. Medieval engineers in North Africa experimented with brass-plated walls to reflect heat away from palace interiors. The city of brass may have harnessed similar design on a massive scale, though judging by the oppressive stillness here, it is a triumph long past usefulness. You reach a broad plaza, strewn with dried palm fronds and bones bleached to the color of ivory. At its center rises a monumental fountain, tiered basins carved from black basalt, each lined with brass and silver filigree. No water flows now. Instead, dust has gathered in whirled drifts along each tier, and wind-borne sand has buried the lower basins. Within one dry bowl sits a human skeleton, robes rotted to brown tatters, its thin arm outstretched toward the fountain's lip, as if begging for water it could never reach. The caravan halts. No one speaks. You feel your throat tighten with grief and fear as you stare at the empty sockets turned skyward. How long had this traveler crawled before collapsing here, alone amid splendor that could not save him? The caliph's vizier leads you down a narrower street, lined with metal-grilled windows, their screens patterned with curling vines and stylized lilies. Behind some lie dark rooms littered with collapsed furniture, bronze urns split and tarnished to a dull verdigris sheen. Others hold small mummified forms curled upon woven reed mats, men and women reduced to husks by centuries of dry heat, their garments still shimmering faintly with gold thread embroidery. You avert your gaze, feeling your stomach lurch. They appear so peaceful in death, as if simply asleep, waiting for dawn that will never come. One scholar whispers that historians still debate whether the city of brass fell overnight to plague, poison, or jinn vengeance. Some texts mention an alchemist queen who sought immortality through forbidden arts, dooming her people to silence and stillness as their breaths turned to dust within their lungs. You grip your lantern tighter as you step over a fallen bronze brazier, its bowl dented and scorched with old incense residue. The air thickens with heat rising from the metal streets, radiating trapped sun from earlier hours. The quiet around you feels suffocating, pressing against your ears until your own pulse roars like a distant drum. As night deepens, shadows pool in doorways and under the arches of window screens. You hear soft sighs drifting down empty alleys, or perhaps it is only your tired mind layering ghost voices onto the restless hush of this timeless grave. For now, you keep walking, guided by flickering lantern light, deeper into silent streets where the city's last breaths still linger, trapped within brass and bone. Night thickens into black velvet, pierced only by your lanterns casting trembling circles of gold along the brass streets. You walk close to the caliph's guards, boots clanging dully on metal tiles as the caravan inches forward through an avenue lined with towering columns. Each pillar is wrapped in embossed copper bands, depicting coiling serpent-bodied jinn with human faces twisted into snarls of rage or anguish. A hush falls over the group as you enter a broad square at the avenue's end. Here, under a dome supported by 4 massive arches, stand 6 towering figures. At first, in the dim light, you think they are statues, guardians forged from brass to watch over this desolate place. But as the lantern glow brightens, their eyes flicker red. They move. The first guardian's head turns with a loud creak of internal gears, metal neck bending to stare down at you. Its eyes glow from within, twin red gemstones pulsing dimly in its hollow sockets. The automaton's body is plated in overlapping bronze scales riveted to a framework of black iron rods. Its hands end in articulated fingers tipped with sharp brass claws. A guard behind you gasps aloud, and the sound triggers the others. Each automaton jerks to life with a series of clanking rattles and grinding whirs. They step forward in perfect unison, their movements unnervingly fluid for creations of metal. You can hear the scrape of sand caught in their joints over the heavy silence, each hiss and clatter echoing between the dome's archways. Historians still argue whether these constructs were true mechanical marvels powered by water, oil, and hidden gears, as some Islamic engineers achieved in automaton fountains and musical toys, or if these tales reflected djinn enchantments encased in metal shells to guard holy sites. Right now, faced with 6 towering bronze warriors whose eyes blaze with malevolence, you don't particularly care whether it's science or sorcery. The caliph's viziers shout urgent prayers, raising amulets etched with verses to repel evil. The automatons pause, heads tilting slightly in eerie mimicry of human curiosity. Then, as if some hidden calculation concludes, the lead construct raises its clawed hand and points toward your group with an accusing slowness. The scholarly scribe beside you mutters a quirky tidbit under his breath, trembling so hard his ink board rattles. The Book of Ingenious Devices describes brass statues that pour wine and tea, not decapitate intruders. Let's hope these are the former. The automaton lowers its hand and steps aside. Its companions follow, splitting into 2 lines flanking the avenue beyond. The pathway lies open, but no one moves at first. The camels snort and buck against their handlers, wide-eyed with fear. You swallow hard, tasting bile and dust, then force your trembling legs forward, 1 step, then another. As you pass beneath the glowing gaze of the bronze guardians, you hear gears ticking softly within their chests like heartbeats powered by winding springs. Their eyes swivel to follow your progress. Ruby light flashing across your face. You keep your gaze fixed ahead, refusing to meet those glassy orbs, terrified that seeing your reflection in them will mark you for whatever judgment they guard. The avenue beyond is lined with low plinths holding urns, jars, and metal chests, each sealed with elaborate locks. The scholarly scribe whispers that historians still debate whether these are funerary offerings or relics of tribute left to appease the city's queen. 1 lock is carved with coiling script reading, "He who opens me, opens eternity." You decide to keep walking. Behind you, the automatons resume their motionless vigil. The heavy silence returns, broken only by the shifting creak of bronze plates settling against iron frames. You do not speak as the caravan presses onward under the brass dome shadow. Every step echoes in your skull with the certainty that you are trespassing upon secrets no mortal was meant to touch. Ahead, down the darkened avenue, the faint glimmer of a palace gate rises in the lantern light, and you realize, with a sinking heart, that your trials are only beginning. For now, though, you are grateful for one simple fact: you are still alive, unscathed, and free to take another trembling breath under the eyes of metal guardians who could have ended you without a flicker of mercy. The avenue narrows into a winding path lined with brass-latticed windows and heavy bronze doors inlaid with emeralds, dulled by centuries of desert wind. As you approach the palace gates, their massive brass panels loom overhead, each studded with dark gemstones that glitter under the lantern's wavering glow. The caliph orders them pushed open, and guards strain against the metal until hinges groan in protest, releasing a burst of stale, hot air tinged with something sour and ancient. Inside, the darkness is near absolute, broken only by the scattered lantern glow. You step into a vast hall whose vaulted ceiling soars beyond your light's reach. Brass columns rise on either side like tree trunks, each wrapped in elaborate reliefs of crowned women flanked by stylized djinn attendants. The echoes of your footsteps roll into the silent distances, returning to you like faint heartbeats. The caravan fans out cautiously, boots crunching on a mosaic floor depicting intertwined serpents coiling around sunbursts and crescent moons. Historians still argue whether these snake motifs represented protective guardian spirits or death's dominion over the city. You suspect both interpretations hold true here. At the hall's far end, a throne rises upon a stepped dais carved from black basalt. It is flanked by twin statues of jinn with human torsos and eagle wings folded along their backs. The throne itself is cast from solid brass etched with curling calligraphy. Seated upon it is a figure so still, at first you think it is another statue. Your lantern glow falls upon her face. She is clad in layered robes that shimmer faintly with gold threads, though the fabric has stiffened into crumbling parchment. Her hands rest upon the armrests, thin fingers of darkened skin still tipped with jeweled rings. A heavy brass crown studded with cracked turquoise sits upon her brow, pressing down into the mummified flesh, and her mouth hangs open in a silent scream. The echo of your gasp rises to the vaulted ceiling. Around you, the caravan freezes in horrified reverence. The scholarly scribe shuffles closer, eyes wide with terror and fascination. Historians still debate if this was Tadmira, queen of brass and mistress of bound jinn, or an earlier ruler absorbed into her myth. He whispers, voice trembling. Either way, her scream has never ended. You peer closer. The desiccated skin along her cheeks is stretched tight, lips pulled back to expose yellow teeth locked in a silent cry. In the lantern light, her sunken eye sockets seem to shimmer faintly. For a breathless moment, you think she is about to blink. You stumble back, heart hammering against your ribs. A quirky tidbit the scribe shares through chattering teeth. Medieval Arab physicians believed a scream caught at death could trap the soul within the corpse, preventing it from reaching paradise. Perhaps her unending wail echoes through eternity, locked within these brass walls. The viziers fan out to examine the throne's inscriptions. One reads aloud, "I was queen of all, bride of Ifrit, mistress of copper and gold. I sought eternity and found silence. Let none disturb my scream, lest they join its chorus." A guard steps forward, drawn by a faint glint of light at the queen's chest. Hanging there, strung upon a tarnished gold chain, is a vial of darkened glass, sealed with wax. Its contents swirl with something viscous and amber under the lantern glow. The caliph gestures sharply, and the vizier carefully unloops it from her neck. As the chain lifts away, the queen's head lolls sideways with a faint clatter of bone against brass. A dry hiss issues from her gaping mouth, like a last whispered curse lost to time. Your knees buckle under the sound, and nausea rises in your throat. You look away, focusing on the shifting reflections across the brass walls. But even then, the silent scream haunts you, vibrating along your spine like an unearthly hum. The caravan withdraws in careful steps, leaving the mummified queen upon her throne of brass and basalt. As you pass under the archway, you cast one last glance backward. For a heartbeat, you imagine her empty eyes shift to follow you, mouth widening into a scream so vast it could swallow every voice on earth. And then the lantern light flickers. Shadows dance across her skeletal face, and she is still once more, trapped forever, in a deathless wail beneath towers of forgotten splendor. You stumble out from the throne hall, heart hammering in your chest, your ears echoing with the memory of her silent scream. The caravan regroups in a broad courtyard surrounded by colonnades of brass pillars wrapped in corroded copper vines. Moonlight filters down through broken lattice domes above, casting skeletal shadows across cracked mosaic floors. Here, the air feels different, cooler, tinged with a faint sweetness that smells like old rose oil and burnt incense. As your lantern swings, its light glints upon shapes littering the courtyard, half-buried chests with upturned lids, amphorae sealed with tarnished brass caps, bronze-bound trunks wrenched open to reveal only dust and scraps of rotted silk. The wealth that once overflowed here has long since turned to husks and rust. But at the courtyard center rises a structure unlike anything you have yet seen. A vast fountain of tiered brass bowls carved into floral lotus forms, each stacked upon the other in widening rings. Between the bowls are rivulets of black glass that once channeled water upward in sparkling cascades. The fountain is dry now, silent under the moon's chill gaze, but in your mind's eye you see it. Jets of perfumed water arcing into the night, lit by flaming brass lanterns swinging overhead. Historians still argue whether such hydraulic wonders were driven by ingenious gear work hidden beneath the paving stones or powered by bound gin compelled to keep the waters flowing. Tonight, as you kneel and press your palm to the fountain's cold, tarnished rim, either explanation feels equally possible. A guard approaches, lantern raised high to illuminate something at the fountain's base. You follow his pointing finger to where a skeleton lies slumped against the lowest bowl. Its skull is tilted upward, jaw locked open in a rictus grin, bony fingers curled around a small brass jug clutched to its chest. The vizier leans down to brush sand from the jug's surface, revealing an inscription etched in looping script. Drink and awaken in eternal gardens. The scholarly scribe shivers beside you, whispering a quirky tidbit he learned from forgotten manuscripts. Some tales say the city's final queen prepared a poison brewed from saffron, myrrh, and powdered brass. Those who drank it fell into a sleep without end, believing they woke in paradise. You feel nausea coil in your stomach as you picture it. The queen's subjects kneeling here, one by one, tilting brass jugs to their lips, chasing eternal gardens that never came. The caliph orders the courtyard searched for hidden vaults or treasures overlooked by time. Guards fan out under the shadowed colonnades, lantern beams sweeping across arched doorways choked with drifting sand. You remain by the fountain, staring into the dry bowls that rise tier upon tier like the ribs of some metal giant long buried beneath the city. Historians still debate whether the city of brass fell through hubris, famine, or divine punishment. Some claim its rulers dared to command jinn as slaves, breaking ancient laws that bound mortal and spirit worlds apart. Others argue drought and salt winds choked its gardens until only brass towers remained, empty and echoing. A sudden gust rattles across the courtyard, swirling grit into your eyes. You blink tears away and glimpse a faint shape across the square, a figure draped in tattered robes, watching from beneath an archway. Heart lurching, you raise your lantern higher, but the silhouette is gone. You swallow hard, mind buzzing with dread and curiosity. Was it a straggler from the caravan, or something that has watched you since you passed the bronze gates? That night, the caravan sleeps sprawled upon bronze tiles, warmed by fading sun. You lie awake, staring up through the broken lattice dome at a thin scythe of moon overhead. The wind slips between the pillars with a hollow sigh, rattling your blankets like unseen hands tugging at the edges. Just before sleep claims you, you hear a voice, soft, feminine, and echoing with centuries of sorrow, drifting across the courtyard. Drink and awaken, awaken, awaken. Your eyes fly open, but nothing moves in the shadows. Only the fountain's silent tears remain, gleaming with moonlight, as if waiting for your trembling hands to lift the brass jug to your lips. You rise at dawn to a silence so profound it seems to press against your eardrums, filling your head with a muffled hum. The caravan packs quickly, eager to leave the fountain's shadow and its whispering dead. As you follow the caliph's retinue through narrow streets lined with brass-screened windows and broken lantern hooks, the city feels even more deserted than before. No wind stirs, no shadows flicker behind lattice screens. It is as if the entire place holds its breath, waiting. Soon, the streets widen into a grand avenue lined with colossal statues of robed women holding up bronze torches. Their hollow eyes stare down at you, blank and judging. Between them, the avenue floor is inlaid with swirling copper filigree, forming an endless tapestry of lotus blossoms and geometric stars. Each step clinks softly on the metalwork, echoing along the deserted boulevard. Halfway down, you spot an enormous gate flanked by two statues unlike the others. These are neither queens nor jinn, but monstrous serpent-bodied creatures with human torsos, brass wings flared outward, and fanged mouths frozen in perpetual hiss. Their eyes are empty sockets, yet you feel their gaze burn into your skin. Historians still argue whether these hybrid guardian statues represented divine protectors of the city or demons bound into metal to keep the queen's enemies at bay. Some fringe scholars believe they were sculpted in the image of Ifrit generals, half-reptilian commanders who led brass-clad armies under Suleiman's seal. The caliph orders the gates forced open. Guards press their shoulders to the panels until they budge with a thunderous groan. Beyond lies a vast garden courtyard enclosed by high bronze walls. You step through and gasp. Here, time has withered everything. Once grand date palms stand as bare trunks. Flower beds have collapsed into mounds of wind-blown sand. Pools lined with mosaic tiles lie cracked and empty, reflecting only shards of dawnlight. But amid the desolation rise dozens of seated figures arranged in circles around the pools. As your lantern sweeps across them, horror coils in your chest. They are people, or what remains of them, mummified bodies draped in embroidered robes, each slumped against a low brass table set with goblets, plates, and small brass ewers. Skeletal fingers rest upon goblets rimmed with green corrosion. Jaws hang slack. Eye sockets gape emptily at the table before them. Some still wear golden anklets and bangles that clink softly as wind drifts through. The scholarly scribe beside you shivers, voice a strained whisper. Historians still debate this mass tableau. Some say it was a feast of farewell when drought doomed the city. Others believe the queen hosted a banquet offering poison-laced wine as an act of mercy or punishment. You walk among the diners, boots crunching on blown sand and flakes of decayed silk. One skeletal woman wears an elaborate diadem, its emeralds cracked by centuries of sun. Her head is bowed forward, her chin resting against the rim of her goblet as if falling asleep mid-toast. A quirky tidbit flickers through your mind. Medieval travelers in North Africa often describe seeing banquet scenes painted in tombs of dead kings. Each guest depicted enjoying eternal revelry. But here, the scene is no painting. It is a feast frozen in death. The caliph orders a search of the brass tables. Guards lift lids from covered platters to reveal only dust, shriveled dates, and fragments of long crumbled bread. One guard tips over a brass ewer, and the last traces of sour-smelling liquid dribble onto the sand. You watch it sink away, darkening the ground before vanishing without trace. As the sun rises, thin beams of gold slip between bronze latticework overhead, casting striped shadows across the silent feast. You imagine laughter once echoed here, music drifting from hidden musicians as the queen raised her goblet to toast her guests under swaying palm fronds. Now, only the hiss of sand against brass remains, a mournful music carried on desert wind. You leave the courtyard in silence, casting one last glance back at the banquet of the dead. For a fleeting moment, the rising sun flares across the goblets, and they glitter as if filled with fresh wine, but when the light fades, only empty cups remain, cradled in bony fingers that will never raise another toast. You walk onward, deeper into the city's labyrinth of silent streets. Brass towers rise on every side, their domes and spires gleaming in the early sun like pale gold. Windows gape black and empty. Doors hang half open, their engraved surfaces warped by heat and time. The caravan's footsteps echo loudly in the stillness, merging with the faint clink of metal buckles and the swish of robes brushing tarnished walls. Eventually, you reach another broad plaza. At its center stands a towering obelisk cast from blackened bronze, its surface etched with dense calligraphy, spiraling upward in endless prayer. Around it lie the remains of what was once a market. Rusted stalls collapsed inward, scraps of torn awnings clinging to corroded poles. Small merchant carts overturned with their wheels half buried in drifting sand. But it is what lies beside the obelisk that makes your breath catch. Dozens upon dozens of figures sit slumped in long rows upon bronze benches. Each is clad in layered robes stiffened with age, their skeletal hands resting on their laps or folded neatly against their chests. Some wear elaborate headscarves pinned with jade ornaments dulled to black. Others have earrings, anklets, or bracelets of turquoise and brass still clinging to their desiccated bodies. They all face the obelisk in silent, unmoving devotion. The scholarly scribe whispers beside you, voice low with awe and dread. Historians still argue whether these were citizens gathered for prayer when the curse struck, or if they were arranged here after death as a warning to trespassers. His fingers tremble on his inkboard. Some chronicles speak of a final sermon given by the queen herself, commanding her people to bow forever before the brass pillar that bound her power. You step closer, your boots crunching over drifting sand and scattered beads from broken necklaces. One of the mummified figures sits taller than the rest, a staff clutched in its skeletal grasp. Its skull is framed by a filigreed brass headdress studded with cracked pearls, marking it as a priest or scholar. Around its bony neck hangs a heavy medallion etched with curling script that catches your lantern's glow. A guard lifts the medallion carefully. Its inscription reads, "He who speaks the final verse shall awaken the silent city." The caliph leans in, eyes gleaming with greedy hope. He commands his viziers to study the calligraphy etched around the obelisk's base. They brush away centuries of caked dust, reading aloud line after line of dense script. The words swirl with invocations to jinn kings, pleas for protection, and threats of curses upon intruders. Finally, one vizier finds the final verse. May brass bind what is bound. May silence serve what is silent. May life end where eternity begins. He recites it clearly into the dawn air. For a moment, the silence deepens so completely you hear your own heartbeat echoing in your skull. Then a low groan shudders through the plaza. The ground beneath your feet vibrates. The rows of mummified worshippers begin to tremble, their stiff robes crackling. Dust drifts from their sunken faces as brittle jaws drop open. You stagger back, bile rising in your throat as a chorus of dry, rasping whispers fills the square. They speak no words, only a long, drawn-out sigh that rises in pitch until it becomes a thin, shrill keen. Historians still debate whether these were souls trapped by the queen's final curse or merely bodies manipulated by restless jinn. In this moment, it feels like both. The sound pierces your skull until tears stream down your cheeks. You clutch your ears, but the shrill keening seems to vibrate inside your bones. Then, as quickly as it began, the sound stops. The figures slump back into stillness, jaws gaping, empty eyes staring upward at the obelisk that binds them. Silence returns, deeper than before. A quirky tidbit flickers through your memory. Medieval desert travelers believed the voices of the dead echo at dawn and dusk, carried upon thin winds to warn the living never to disturb sacred ground. You flee the plaza, stumbling over sand-slick bronze tiles, desperate to leave the silent congregation behind. As you pass under a low archway leading into a shadowed street, you cast one last glance back. For a fleeting moment, it seems every mummified head has turned to watch your retreat, hollow eyes gleaming with dawn's thin light. Then the shadows swallow you, and only the echo of their keening remains, ringing in your skull like a prayer you can never forget. The street narrows into a dim corridor lined with brass-screened windows, each carved into curling floral latticework that casts shifting patterns across your face as you walk. Overhead, bridges of corroded bronze connect the buildings like skeletal ribs, creaking faintly in the warm dawn breeze. You walk close to the guards, the echoes of the worshippers' shrill keening still buzzing along your spine. Soon, the passage opens into another courtyard, smaller and enclosed on all sides by tall brass walls. At its center rises a structure so strange it takes you a moment to comprehend its shape. A massive sphere of darkened bronze resting upon a wide stone pedestal. The sphere is etched with hundreds of delicate symbols, from looping Kufic prayers to star maps and geometric calculations. It glints dully in the dawn light, as if harboring the last secrets of a dead civilization. The scholarly scribe inhales sharply, eyes wide with wonder. Historians still argue whether this was a giant celestial globe used for astronomical calculations or a prison for jinn bound by Suleiman's seal. Some chronicles claim it was the queen's private observatory, mapping heavens and spirits alike. You approach cautiously. The globe is so large you could wrap your arms around only a quarter of its girth. Tarnish creeps in streaks down its sides where condensation once pooled in desert dawns. Faintly, you see your reflection warped across its curved surface, multiplied 100-fold in tiny mirrored star panels riveted into the brass. A guard knocks on its side with his spear. A dull, hollow boom echoes out, vibrating under your feet. You imagine something shifting inside, something ancient and furious, twisting against the confines of metal that hold it. The scholarly scribe leans forward to read a narrow band of calligraphy encircling the sphere's equator. His voice trembles as he translates, "I am Al-Nazir, watcher of heaven and keeper of flames. Speak my name, and your voice shall be carried to the stars, or cast into the winds beneath the earth." He swallows hard, sharing a quirky tidbit with you in a strained whisper. Medieval engineers built celestial globes like this from brass sheets soldered into spheres, etching them with star positions to aid navigation. But none this large have ever been found until now. The caliph steps forward, eyes gleaming with unspoken ambition. He orders his viziers to speak the globe's name aloud, testing its promise. One brave vizier clears his throat and calls out, "Al-Nazir!" His voice bounces around the courtyard walls before dying away into silence. At first, nothing happens. Then the sphere vibrates faintly under your touch. Thin lines of red light flicker within the etched symbols, racing along their curves like fire crawling through dry reeds. A low, metallic hum rises from its depths, vibrating so intensely your teeth ache. The etched constellations glow brighter as if molten brass shines beneath their tarnished surfaces. Suddenly, the hum stops. Silence crashes down upon the courtyard so abruptly it makes your ears ring. Then, from deep within the sphere, a voice booms out, low, echoing, and inhuman. It fills the space with resonant fury. Who dares awaken the Watcher of Heaven? Speak your desire or be unmade. Historians still argue whether this was the voice of a bound jinn or a clever acoustic mechanism crafted to echo pronouncements in ancient rituals. In this moment, your quaking knees decide it is certainly the former. The caliph raises his hand to silence his trembling viziers. He steps forward, tilting his chin upward with regal arrogance, and declares, "Reveal to us the path to your queen's final treasury." The globe's etched constellations flare blindingly bright, forcing you to shield your eyes. The voice rumbles once more, "Follow the serpent to the eye, where brass binds light in silent sleep." Then the glow dies. Silence returns, and the sphere is nothing more than tarnished brass reflecting dawn's pale beams. Your heart hammers against your ribs as you lower your hand. You hear the caliph's ragged breathing beside you. His eyes gleam with greed and fear, and in that moment, you know this journey will not end without unraveling something best left sealed under brass and black sand. For now, the caravan turns away from Al-Nazir, leaving its curved surface to catch the first true rays of sunrise, gleaming blood gold under the quiet sky. You follow the caliph's retinue out of the courtyard, the watcher's final words echoing in your mind, "Follow the serpent to the eye." The scholarly scribe walks beside you, lips moving soundlessly as he deciphers possible meanings. Around you, the city stirs with faint dawn breezes rustling drifting sand down brass avenues, but otherwise remains silent as a grave. The procession turns onto a wide avenue paved with dark bronze tiles etched into the form of a coiling serpent. Its massive body winds along the street, scales rendered in geometric tessellations of hammered copper, brass, and inlaid lapis. The serpent's head is carved into a snarling mask at the avenue's end, fangs bared, eyes set with black glass that glitters under the rising sun. Historians still argue whether this avenue marked a sacred ceremonial path for the Queen's processions or an arcane map of the heavens rendered upon the city's streets. Either way, it is clear to you now, this is the serpent the Watcher spoke of. The caravan follows the serpent's bronze body through winding alleys and narrow gates until you reach its eye, a grand plaza overlooked by a towering ziggurat clad in polished brass panels that reflect the morning sky in fractured gold. The pyramid rises in receding tiers, each lined with squat columns and carved brass statues of robed priestesses holding lotus-tipped scepters. You swallow hard, tilting your head back until your neck aches. The ziggurat seems to scrape the clouds themselves. At its base yawns an archway choked with drifting sand. Guards dig feverishly to clear the entrance while viziers chant prayers against curses. When at last the threshold is revealed, the scholarly scribe steps forward, whispering a quirky tidbit. Some chronicles claim this temple housed the Queen's treasury, where brass bound light itself to power her eternal reign. The caliph orders lanterns lit and steps inside, followed by his closest guards. You follow, your footsteps crunching over sand and corroded coins scattered like dry leaves across the threshold. Within lies a broad hall lined with columns wrapped in brass sheaths etched with swirling script. Between each column stand statues of robed women, their eyes inlaid with tarnished silver, hands outstretched as if offering unseen gifts to the dark. Historians still debate whether these statues were priestesses immortalized in brass or hollow shells inhabited by bound spirits to guard the Queen's secrets. As your lantern light flickers across their faces, you almost expect them to turn their heads and whisper curses at your trespass. At the hall's far end rises a vast dais supporting a throne of solid copper, carved into the shape of intertwined serpents. Upon it sits another mummified figure, clad in robes that crumble like ash under the faintest breeze. A heavy brass crown still rests upon its brow, pressing down into the desiccated skin. The figure's mouth hangs open, lips pulled back in a skeletal grin. Before the throne lies a massive brass chest, bound in bands of etched bronze, its lock formed from interlaced plates shaped like lotus petals. The scholarly scribe kneels to inspect it, breath quick with awe. Historians still argue if this chest contained gold, scrolls of forbidden knowledge, or the final lamp that bound the jinn to the Queen's will. The caliph gestures sharply. Guards move forward, prying at the lotus lock with iron rods until it snaps open with a hollow clang. Silence falls so deep you hear your pulse thudding in your ears as the lid is slowly lifted. Inside lies not gold nor jewels, but a single object resting upon folded black silk, a brass lamp, its surface etched with curling script so fine it seems woven into the metal, as your lantern's glow caresses its curves. Faint red flickers dance along the inscriptions like tiny tongues of flame. A low sigh of reverence passes through the caravan. The caliph steps forward, hands trembling, and lifts the lamp from its bed of silk. The metal is warm to his touch, pulsing faintly with an inner life. He holds it aloft, eyes gleaming with triumph. "Behold," he whispers, voice trembling with greed and fear, "the queen's final command over the jinn." The scholarly scribe inhales sharply, whispering a final quirky tidbit to you under his breath. "Some say this lamp bound the city itself to her will. If it is unsealed, her curse will awaken." Historians still debate whether the queen's lamp contained the spirit of her enslaved consort, a wrathful married king whose power fueled her reign. Right now, as the caliph grips its warm metal tightly, you feel the air around you grow heavy, pressing down against your chest until each breath burns with dread. The caliph turns, lamp raised high, eyes gleaming with a hunger that chills your soul. "Tonight," he declares, "we leave with eternity in our hands." But in the shadows behind him, the mummified queen's empty eyes glimmer faintly, and her silent smile seems to widen. The caliph cradles the lamp to his chest as if it holds not just power, but life itself. Around you, lanterns flicker weakly in the vast, echoing hall. The air seems to thrum with an unseen vibration rising from the brass floors and columns into your bones. A guard shifts uneasily, his spear tapping the metal tiles with a faint ringing note that bounces among the silent statues. The scholarly scribe clears his throat, voice trembling. Historians still argue whether the lamp grants mastery over jinn or merely seals their rage within its brass walls. Some chronicles claim the queen herself was consumed when she attempted to harness its final secret. The caliph ignores him. With a hungry gleam in his eyes, he steps down from the dais and gestures for the caravan to move. "We leave this place now. I will unseal it where sand and sky bear witness to my dominion." You turn to follow, but a faint rustle freezes you in place. The mummified queen's robes stir in the still air, as if ruffled by an invisible breeze. Her skeletal jaw shifts open another inch, producing a thin, rasping sigh that scrapes your nerves raw. You cannot tear your gaze from her hollow eyes that glitter dully in the lantern light. As the guards carry the chest out, you remain behind for a moment, staring at her sunken face. A quirky tidbit flickers through your mind. Medieval scholars believed brass could trap souls within its polished surface, imprisoning their reflections for eternity. You wonder how many lives are caught in the glint of her crown, trapped forever within tarnished metal. Outside, the dawn light cuts hard shadows across the brass streets. The caravan winds its way back along the Serpent Avenue. The lamp pulses faintly with warmth in the caliph's grasp, its inscriptions glowing as though lit from within. Each flicker sends a tremor through your heart, tightening your chest with dread. Historians still debate whether the city of brass was cursed by God, abandoned by jinn, or simply collapsed under the weight of its own arrogance. But as you pass beneath arches adorned with silent bronze guardians, you sense an unspoken truth. Power never leaves willingly. It merely sleeps, waiting for the next greedy hand to disturb its dreams. As you near the towering gates, You glance back. The silent streets gleam under the rising sun, metal surfaces glowing pale gold. For a fleeting moment, the city seems alive again, robed figures bustling through markets, bronze fountains spraying perfumed water into the morning air, musicians plucking oud strings under shaded colonnades. But then your eyes blink against the sun's glare, and all that remains is silence and the echo of long-dead prayers. At the gates, the caravan halts to regroup. Guards glance nervously at the lamp. The scholarly scribe stands beside you, voice hushed and urgent. If he unseals that lamp, we may never leave this desert alive. The caliph turns, eyes gleaming with fevered ambition. He raises the lamp high, pressing his lips to its brass spout. In that instant, a low rumble shudders through the earth beneath your feet. Sand spills from the gate lintels. The serpent avenue vibrates, rattling tarnished scales against stone. The caliph begins to chant an ancient verse etched along the lamp's curve. The wind rises sharply, whipping dust into your eyes. Statues tremble along the walls, their metal surfaces humming with low resonance. The sky overhead darkens as wind and sand spiral upward into a whirling vortex above the city. And then, from within the lamp, a blinding red light explodes outward. The caliph's scream is lost in the deafening roar that follows, a sound like 1,000 bronze trumpets blasting in unison, echoing against towers and domes until your ears ring with pain. In the swirling sandstorm, you glimpse a vast shadow rising, something serpentine and winged, scales gleaming with molten brass, eyes glowing like twin suns. Its roar shakes the very stones under your feet. Historians still argue whether this was the wrath of a married king, an Ifrit general freed from servitude, or the vengeful soul of the queen herself, unleashed upon those who dared disturb her eternal rest. All you know is this: as the caravan scatters in terrified screams, as the towering brass gates crack and buckle under a titanic force, as the sky burns red with a swirling sandstorm lit by unearthly flame, you probably won't survive this. And yet, amid your terror, a small, sardonic voice whispers within you, "At least it won't be boring." Now, as the roar fades into a distant, echoing hum, let your mind drift away from the towering gates and swirling sands. Feel the tremble in your chest soften into a gentle thrum, like a lantern flickering in the safety of your room. Picture the brass city shrinking far below you as you float upward, leaving behind silent towers, serpentine avenues, and the sleeping queen's empty smile. The wind that howled with rage softens into a breeze brushing lightly across your cheeks, carrying the faint scent of old incense and dry rose petals. Your body sinks deeper into your blankets, the tension loosening from your neck and shoulders until your limbs grow pleasantly heavy, and your breathing evens into slow, quiet sighs. Above you stretches a tranquil desert sky lit by countless stars, cool and silent. Their soft light glimmers like tiny brass etchings upon the darkness. Let each star calm your thoughts, dimming the last echoes of the city's silent screams. There is no more dust, no more curses, no restless jinn, only your steady breathing and the safe hush of night around you. Feel your eyelids grow heavier as you listen to the distant hush of the desert winds. Each breath carries you further from silent queens and greed-lost caliphs, closer to that quiet place behind your thoughts where sleep waits patiently. Let it draw you in with cool, gentle hands, wrapping your mind in silent darkness. And there, in that silent darkness, know you are safe. Nothing ancient or angry can reach you here. Only dreams remain, soft, flickering dreams that carry you deeper into peace.